He will then introduce Pat Frank, the clerk of the court, who's very committed to this project. She will then introduce Cindy Stewart, who is going to be the new clerk starting in January. So Neil.
Thanks, Tom. Hi, everybody. My name is Neil Voles. I'm the Deputy Director for the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. Neil, N-E-I-L. The last name is Voles, V as in Victor, O, L as in Lion, Z as in Zebra. And I'm the Deputy Director for the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition. As you can see, we have our bus, and we've been traveling around to different cities in the state to talk about the fines and fees program, the FRC's fines and fees program, which we know is a win-win-win situation for local communities. The fines and fees program was set up in 2019. We began to help returning citizens that year. We've been helping returning citizens this year. We've been, and we will continue to help returning citizens in the years ahead. The mission of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition is to end the disenfranchisement and break down barriers to reentry for returning citizens. That includes everything from helping people get access to jobs and housing, opportunity, and as well also restoring eligibility to vote. We think this is a win-win situation because, one, it helps returning citizens move forward with their lives and their families' lives. Two, this helps provide vital resources at a time when it's desperately needed because of the COVID pandemic. All across the state, we've seen courthouses, court systems are losing money. We've seen that they've lost over $60 million in the state, and this is an opportunity to provide vital resources to vital programming for things like the Victims Compensation Fund, teen court, public defender's offices, state attorney's offices, things that are necessary for the community. And in doing so, we know that we're protecting taxpayers. Because what we've seen is that in some instances already, local jurisdictions are being asked to spend money to provide for the services in the court systems. And we know that this is an incredible opportunity to actually protect taxpayers so that you can get money coming into these important services without having to raise taxes. That's why we believe this is such an important program, and it's a win-win-win for local communities, including here in the Tampa area. And with that being said, I am going to actually introduce our Executive Director of the Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, Desmond Meade, to share a few words. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Desmond Meade. I am the Executive Director of Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, D-E-S-M-O-N-D-M-E-A-D-E. You couldn't see it when I was standing back there and I had my mask on, but I was smiling. I think that this is a day for all of Florida to celebrate because not only what we're doing is creating a more inclusive democracy in this state, not only are we removing barriers for people who may want to participate in our democracy, right, but we're also doing things that would benefit all of Florida taxpayers throughout the state of Florida. As Neil said, we've been going around the state from county to county, issuing these checks, these symbolic checks, that really represent the amount of revenue that we've been able to infuse into our court system. As he talked about before, we've seen reports where collectively court systems in the state of Florida have been forced to either reduce the salary or lay off 57%, right, of personnel that works within the court system. And we know in the spirit of Amendment 4, in the spirit of the work that we're doing, the mission of FRRC, that we believe not only in advocating on behalf of people with prior felony convictions, but doing so in a way that benefits everybody. Neil said this is a win-win-win situation, and it is, right? And this is, for me, a moment to smile about, a moment to be happy. In Florida Rights Restoration Coalition, if I could be bold to say that our organization have really been the one organization that's probably infused more funding into our system, especially in the age of COVID crisis that we're facing, right, that benefits people and prevents people from losing their jobs. Also, it creates a situation where taxpayers would not have to shoulder the burden of having to fund a system that historically has no expectations of collecting more than 10% of fees assessed by the court system. And so when we stopped and we thought about it the other day, we was blown away to think that we were able to organize this entire country, to get patriots, defenders of democracy, to stand up and contribute to the Fines and Fees Fund. And in doing so, not only were they clearing the way, but they was actually helping Florida out. And so we're proud to present these checks to clerk of courts throughout the state of Florida. We were in Dade County, where we presented a check for $7 million. We were in Brevard County, where we presented a check for $551,000. And that number is significant because they recently had a $500,000 deficit that they were asking the county to fill. And we were just in Lee County, where we presented a check for about $601,000, and we was in Palm Beach County, where we presented a check for over $1 million. All in total, we had citizens across this state and across the country contribute upwards of $25 million to our Fines and Fees Fund, and every single one of those dollars is being infused into our court system throughout the state of Florida. We have now written checks for 60 out of the 67 counties in the state of Florida. It's another reason to celebrate, because this is what happens when you have nonprofit organizations or advocacy organizations partnering with elected officials, right, for the benefit of the people, where we put partisan politics aside and focus solely on the needs of the people. And when you have officials like Ms. Anne Frank, right, that understands and responds to the cries of the needs of the people, when we work together, amazing things happen. You know, I like to take you all back, and we could think about it with COVID-19, that when you see the beautiful responses, it has always been when people from all walks of life and all political persuasions come together for the needs of the people. It's only when partisan politics get involved and they have the infighting that we see that nothing happens and people die. And so we like to celebrate, right? We like to celebrate partnerships with public servants like Ms. Anne Frank and organizations that are striving and advocating on behalf of the people, regardless of their race, regardless of their political preferences, understanding that we all connect with each other along the lines of humanity. This is in the same spirit of Amendment 4. When we passed Amendment 4, we had over 5.1 million people that said yes for second chances. People from all political persuasions, all races, all socioeconomic status. And we once again are embracing that spirit of love that brings people together, and we do not, and we refrain from engaging in things that would divide our community, that would divide our state, and that would divide our country. And so these events that we're having, these conferences that we're having, is to celebrate this and to encourage other public servants to step up to the occasion, to work with advocacy organizations in their community for the benefit of the community, for the benefit of people. This time, I would like to call one of our examples of what a public servant looked like, Ms. Pat Frank, who has been working diligently with us for over a year. We've been doing this for over a year, where we've been utilizing the court system as well as working with the clerk of courts to establish exactly what people owe and make arrangements to have those outstanding legal financial obligations paid. And so at this time, Ms. Pat Frank, thank you so much for your service. I'd like to call you to the podium.
I'm truly honored to be here, to be with these people who are so dedicated to this cause. It has been something that I've been interested in for years. I've got to give you a little bit of a history. I'm 90 years old. I was born in 1929. The amendment to give women the right to vote passed in 1920. But interestingly enough, when do you think that Florida finally ratified that amendment? May of 1969. 69. 40 years after I was born. We have really had to struggle, all of us, to get a right to vote. And it was suppression that did this. And I went back and looked at the history, and it was a white woman who led the charge against the ratification of the amendment in Florida, because she didn't want to have black women to vote. So how far have we come? That's 69. We have roads still to travel. We've got to get this straightened out. There is nothing in the United States Constitution that qualifies someone for voting except to be a citizen and of age. They don't ask you to measure how many jelly beans are in a jar anymore, but believe me, that was done in states. And I lived in Virginia when you had to pay a poll tax, and that was ruled unconstitutional. So what we have to do is ultimately just get that removed. The legislature should have the common decency to get those provisions removed. They've made it more difficult and more voter suppression. They don't know how people are going to vote. We don't know how people are going to vote. All we want to do is give them the right to be a full citizen, to be a dignified full citizen. I can tell you that I have never missed a vote. Ever since I was able to get a vote, I have never missed an election. I would not think of it. Today I'm wearing my voted ticket because I did it by absentee ballot. I think you'd appreciate it that I've been quarantined for several months because of my age. And I think we have to encourage everybody to continue the fight. We've got a deadline that is now passing because the last day for registration is today, and this cause still goes on. There are other battles to be fought, but we want to make certain that we have the leadership of the restitution group intact, and that we make it a cause for people to donate to the cause. And Desmond mentioned that this helps the clerk's office. Let me tell you how it helps us. This year we had a shortfall of over $3 million. If it had not been for the county helping us by some money that they bridged for us, we would have been in layouts too. Our revenue is down. Now, what this does is it gives us the ability to use that money and hopefully even pay some back to the county. We've got another shortfall in the next year because our fiscal year has already started from October to October. So we're faced with real shortfalls. When this first happened, when we first thought about this, and I can tell you that it has been on my mind for so long. Justice Peggy Quince was on the Supreme Court, and she put me on a committee of justice and equality. And I talked about this. And then I talked about it at the public service, PSCC, which is the group of law enforcement agencies representing anything that deals with the law. And I told them that, you know, we don't want to keep people handicapped when they're supposed to be able to be rehabilitated. They should have all their rights back again. So what I did was we are obligated to turn over, if we can't collect money in 90 days, to turn it over to a collection agency. And the legislature gives us a percentage that can be added onto that in order to pay the collection agency. Well, when I signed the contract with my collection agency, I put in a provision that I could pull that back at any time if I wanted to. Well, I did. I pulled back those cases, and we went back from 3 to 5 years because that was the probable window that we thought that would be most effective. And when we pulled it back, and the restoration people came up with money to pay the initial fines, fees, and costs, I forgave the 40%. We were not going to get the money back. And what was the reason to keep that in place? So it's been a win-win for us. Now we have money that comes to us. Now these people are free to go out and register to vote, and they can proudly say, work in elections, run for election, be vocal about it, tell other people to do the same thing. And all of us who have the privilege of voting and know what it feels when you're rooting for your candidate on the election night and having a fun party, and you meet wonderful people. I've met wonderful people through campaigns. Some of my very, very best, dearest friends have been campaign workers because we're on the same page. We have the same values, and we're supporting the same people. So voting is important. And once again, I appreciate all the work that the Restoration Coalition has done. We could have not started out that initial point where they had the seed money to do what we could do with the 40% forgiveness. So this was a partnership all the way around and winners all the way around. And I just want to congratulate the Restoration Group, Desmond, Neil, and I anticipate, according to our figures, maybe Desmond doesn't have the figures, but we are calculating that we will be receiving $771,353, and we will have restored the rights to 841 people. That is a winning victory. Thank you very much. And now, I would like to have the privilege of introducing my successor to this office. Cindy Stewart is a school board member who's been elected to my position. We're going to exchange places in January, so we're in a transition period. But Cindy has some very important things to say to you. So with that, I'd introduce Cindy Stewart. Sorry, Cindy.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I can tell you, while she's been quarantined, she certainly is never silent. So thank you for being here this morning, Pat. I was fortunate enough in my election cycle to be endorsed by Pat. And I have to tell you, she's an icon in this community, and when people hear that someone is behind you like Pat, they listen. I look forward to continuing her legacy as I take office in January and continuing her commitment to helping returning citizens regain their voting rights. It's appropriate that we're standing in front of Lady Justice this morning, looking over us, peering through the slits of her blindfold. Because as the returning citizens can tell you, justice isn't always blind. The right to vote is fundamental to ensuring justice for all, and elections matter. That's why, as Pat has done, I will put the full force of this office and the hard-working clerks inside this courthouse behind me and the Florida Restoration Coalition and their important mission to paying off those financial obligations to work. So thank you all for being here this morning. We look forward to continuing to work. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here. We appreciate you. Thank you, Pat, for coming out. Love you, you know that. If there are any questions, we'll entertain those at this time. Thank you.
Desmond, there's been a lot of talk about Bloomberg and his money. Has he contributed to the FRCC, and are they intertwined?
We have not received one penny from Mike Bloomberg. The money that we've raised have been raised from over 88,000 individuals throughout this country. We've received money from celebrities you all know, like the Michael Jordans and LeBron James. We've received money from sports franchise like the Miami Dolphins, the Miami Heat, the Orlando Magic. We've received money from corporations like Levi's and Viacom. and just average everyday citizens from around this country. That's where we have gotten our money from, and that's the beautiful thing about it, because it's reminiscent of the Amendment 4 campaign, where we was able to garner support from all sectors in support of second chances. And so this time, folks across the country have been contributing money because they believe, like we believe, that no American citizen should be forced to choose between putting food on their table or voting. No Floridian should be forced to choose between paying their rent or their mortgage or voting. That voting should be unencumbered and free.
Can I add to that, Desmond?
Yes.
If I can just add a point about this conversation around what's going on. We encourage people to put yourself in the shoes of returning citizens, right? We believe there's not a better evangelist for democracy than somebody who's lost the right to vote and got it back. So we know all across this state there are people who are yearning to have their voices heard. And what we've seen is a roller coaster over the last couple years since the passage of Amendment 4, to the point where a few months ago there were hundreds of thousands of returning citizens who went to bed at night thinking they were going to be able to participate in democracy this year. And then a few weeks ago, after a court decision, they found out that they were unable to do that this year. And what we've seen, as Desmond outlined, is an incredible surge of public support and love for individuals who are simply yearning to have their voices heard. And we think that in this moment of great division and partisan strife, is an incredible story to see tens of thousands of individuals literally loving somebody else enough to say, I will support your effort to tear these barriers that exist in front of your ability to participate in democracy. And we just want to encourage folks to put themselves in the shoes of the returning citizens who are really at the heart of this. And we know there are some local returning citizens here who have gone through the fines and fees program, who we can connect with you after the press conference.
Do you tell people who to vote for?
Say it
Do
again.
you tell people who to vote for?
No, we don't tell people who to vote for. At the end of the day, you know, we've taken on, when we were in the middle of the Amendment 4 campaign, we were very clear that Amendment 4 was fighting just as hard for that person that wanted to vote for Donald Trump as we were for that person that wished they could have voted for President Barack Obama. At the end of the day, what matters most to us is not how a person votes, but the fact that they have the opportunity to have their voices heard. And we've always maintained that, and we will continue to maintain that, because felon disenfranchisement has impacted people from all walks of life and all political persuasions. And anytime you engage in any activity solely because of how you think somebody may vote, that is not the democratic way to operate. Now, that's an affront to what this country is all about. That's an affront to democracy. We believe that all voices should be heard.
Anybody else have any questions?
How many people in Florida have received your gift? Oh, Florida.
Well, just to be general, we know that we've been seeing an average of about $1,000 per individual. And so if we're spending $25 million in these various court systems, then we estimate that at least 25,000 people now have a pathway clear. So if they want to engage in what we believe is the most important election this country has ever seen, then they now have an opportunity to do so. I also like to add that so much attention have been placed on the 774,000 individuals that cannot vote because of legal financial obligations. But we seem to forget that Amendment 4 cleared the pathway to 1.4 million, which means that there's 500,000 to 600,000 returning citizens living in this state right now who have an opportunity to register to vote right now today because they have no outstanding fines and fees. And so a great example, 2 nights ago, a mother called me inquiring about her son who had outstanding a fee of about $2,000 and wanted to know what could be done so her son would be able to vote. Well, when we inquired into her son's case, we found out that the son owed nothing to the courts as it relates to his felony conviction. His sentence was fully complete. That $2,000 was associated with a traffic case, a traffic citation. And so therefore, that young man was already able to vote, and we have, unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of individuals who think that they may have some type of outstanding financial barrier when they don't. And so we encourage people to connect with Florida Rights Restoration Coalition so we can help them make that determination if they're eligible to vote. But we know there's 600,000 out there that can register today before the deadline ends.
All right.
So if there's no further questions, thank you all so much for coming out this morning, and let's celebrate creating a more inclusive democracy.
Thank you.
Is it appropriate,
Thanks, everybody.
appropriate for everybody to hold the check?
Wanna hold this check?
Yes, he can hold it.
One thing I want to clarify is this check is for future payments. We've already spent $750,000. This is on top of that.